In the next 3 seconds, you're going to learn the difference between winning an argument and winning people. Because here's the brutal truth. You can prove someone wrong and still lose their respect, their trust, and the room. Marcus Aurelius faced this in the cold north with tired soldiers, nervous generals, and senators who spoke loudly to hide their fear. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't try to look smarter. He asked one question calmly, and the entire conversation changed direction. That's the Socratic method, not a weapon to humiliate, but a discipline to expose illusions, soften ego, and pull the truth into daylight. Today, I'm giving you 5 questions that can dismantle almost any argument without raising your voice. You'll learn how to disarm defensiveness, reveal hidden assumptions, and guide people to contradict themselves peacefully. And at the end, I'll show you the one mistake that turns this method into manipulation so you can use it like a Stoic with power, precision, and restraint. Question 1, how do you know that's true? Let me ask you something. Pause for one breath and say this with me. Certainty is not truth, because most arguments don't survive on facts. They survive on repetition. Picture this moment. A Roman war tent, rain tapping against leather, maps spread across the table. A general points at the border and says, "We must attack now." Everyone agrees. Everyone agrees. Those 2 words have justified wars, ruined companies, and destroyed relationships. Marcus Aurelius didn't argue. He didn't counter with his own opinion. He simply asked calmly, almost gently, "How do you know that's true?" That question was not an attack. It was a flashlight. Because when someone answers with "everyone says, so it's obvious," or "that's just how it's done," you're not hearing truth. You're hearing imitation. And history proves this. At least 72% of widely believed claims online are repeated without original verification, according to studies on misinformation spread. Repetition creates confidence. Confidence creates illusion. Marcus understood this deeply. He wrote in Meditations, "Opinion is the enemy of truth. Remove opinion and you remove suffering." Here's how this plays out today. A manager says, "This project will fail." Instead of defending yourself, you ask, "What makes you certain and based on what experience?" Then you stop. You don't explain. You don't rescue them. Silence does something powerful. Neurologically, silence triggers discomfort in the brain. The mind rushes to fill the gap, often revealing weak foundations or borrowed beliefs. This is why silence was Marcus's secret weapon. Now reset with me, inhale slowly, and remember this line. Your confidence is not evidence. Practical use starting today. Ask one of these, just one. What's the source of that? Is that firsthand knowledge or something repeated? Notice the shift. Defensiveness drops. Thinking begins. Exercise for you tonight. Write down one belief you strongly hold. Then ask yourself, how do I know this is true? Not how strongly you feel, but where it came from. If the source is vague, emotional, or inherited, you've just found a blind spot. And blind spots control us more than lies ever could. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he knew the greatest danger wasn't enemies, it was unexamined beliefs. That's why this first question is the foundation of all the others. Because once certainty cracks, assumptions are exposed, and that's exactly where we're going next. Stay with me. Question 2, what are you assuming? Before we go further, pause for a moment and say this with me. Most suffering begins with an assumption. Marcus Aurelius understood this long before modern psychology named it. Return again to the Roman war tent. The map hasn't changed. The facts haven't changed. Yet tension fills the room. A general says we must attack now. Delay means weakness. Marcus doesn't argue. He doesn't deny the urgency. He asks one quiet question. What are we assuming if we attack now? That question lands softly, but it cuts deep, because every argument stands on invisible beams, and assumptions are the beams we forget to inspect. Modern cognitive science confirms this. Over 80% of human judgments are driven by unconscious assumptions, not deliberate reasoning. We don't think our way into most beliefs, we absorb them. Marcus warned himself of this danger in Meditations. You see things not as they are, but as you are. Reset with me, slow breath in, and remember this. Assumptions feel like facts until they are questioned. In the tent, Marcus begins to expose the invisible. Are we assuming the enemy is weaker than reported? Are we assuming our soldiers can endure another push? Are we assuming surprise is still possible? None of these are facts. They are silent beliefs doing the real work of persuasion. This question doesn't attack people. It illuminates foundations, and that's why it's so powerful in modern life. Someone says everyone should go to college. Instead of arguing, ask, what are you assuming about success? That everyone wants the same life, that money equals meaning, that college always leads to opportunity. Watch what happens. The certainty weakens. Thinking begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Unchecked assumptions quietly dye our entire lives." Here's a more personal example. Someone says, "I'm not good enough." That single sentence carries multiple assumptions. There is a fixed standard of worth. That standard is fair, and someone else gets to judge. Ask gently, compared to what standard and who decided that standard? In many cases, years of quiet self-suffering collapse in that moment. Reset, again, say it with me. Assumptions control us when we don't see them. Practical use starting today. When you hear a strong claim, ask one of these. What needs to be true for this to hold? Which part are we treating as guaranteed? Notice the effect. Defensiveness drops, curiosity enters. Exercise for you do this tonight. Write down one argument you had recently. At the top, write the main claim. Under it, list at least 3 assumptions that must be true for the claim to stand. Most people are shocked by what they discover. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, not to doubt everything, but to avoid living inside illusions. He governed an empire during war, famine, and plague. Decisions based on false assumptions cost lives. That's why Stoics didn't fear uncertainty. They feared false certainty. Marcus reminded himself, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And judgments are built on assumptions. Once assumptions are exposed, something critical happens. The mind becomes ready for humility. Because the next question doesn't ask what you believe, it asks whether you are willing to be wrong. That is where real strength begins. Stay with me. Question 3. What evidence would change your mind? This is the question where most arguments quietly die. Not because someone loses, but because the truth finally reveals who is willing to learn and who is only defending themselves. Marcus Aurelius understood this earlier than most leaders ever do. Picture the moment. The war council has debated for hours. Voices are calmer now, but positions are hardened. Each general is certain. Each believes logic is on his side. Marcus listens. Then he asks, if a scout returned in 1 hour with clear proof that the enemy is fortified, would you still attack? The question lands heavily, because it doesn't challenge strategy. It challenges identity. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The moment a belief becomes part of who we are, changing it feels like self-destruction. Modern neuroscience confirms this. When core beliefs are challenged, the brain activates the same regions associated with physical pain. That's why people don't just argue back, they resist, rationalize, and sometimes attack. Marcus warned himself about this trap. He wrote in Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment of it." Reset with me, slow breath in and repeat quietly. A strong mind updates, a weak mind defends. This question exposes the difference. When someone says, "Nothing could change my mind," they are not expressing strength. They are confessing closure. At that moment, conversation has reached its limit, not because truth is unavailable, but because humility is. Marcus knew when to stop pushing. Stoicism is not about forcing wisdom into others. It is about recognizing where reason still lives. Here's how this question works in modern life. Someone says crypto is a scam. You don't argue. You ask, what kind of evidence would make you reconsider? If the answer is nothing, the debate is over. They have told you everything you need to know. Psychologists call this belief entrenchment. Once beliefs are insulated from evidence, no amount of data can penetrate. Studies show that presenting facts to entrenched believers can actually strengthen their original position by up to 20%. This is known as the backfire effect. Marcus intuitively avoided this mistake. Reset moment, say it with me. Reason requires openness. This question is not meant to trap others. It is meant to test yourself. Ask it inwardly. If evidence proved me wrong, would I feel relief or humiliation? That answer reveals whether you serve truth or ego. Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. He ruled during plagues, wars, and political chaos. Certainty was comforting but often deadly. He wrote, "Do not be ashamed of help. It is your task to achieve what is set before you, like a soldier storming a wall." Admitting error is not weakness. It is cooperation with reality, practical use in conversation. Ask calmly, what would you accept as a fair test? What would count as disconfirming evidence? Then pause. Silence is essential. Silence removes pressure. Silence allows honesty to surface. Reset again. Slow breath and remember, you don't need to win, you need to see. Exercise for you do this today. Write down one belief you feel emotionally attached to. Now write one scenario where that belief could be wrong. If your mind resists, notice that resistance. That is the edge of growth. Marcus Aurelius believed philosophy was not about clever arguments. It was about daily self-examination. He reminded himself, reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears. And here is the deeper shock. Once someone admits what evidence could change their mind, the tone of the entire conversation changes. Egos relax. Curiosity enters. Truth becomes a shared goal, not a battlefield. This question separates thinkers from believers, learners from defenders, the flexible from the fragile. Reset one last time, say it slowly. If nothing can change my mind, I am no longer thinking. And once humility appears, something extraordinary becomes possible. Perspective. That is where we go next. Because the next question doesn't ask whether you can be wrong, it asks whether you can step outside yourself. Stay with me. Question 4. What would a thoughtful opponent say? Before we continue, pause and say this with me. Understanding is not agreement. This was one of Marcus Aurelius's most powerful disciplines. He didn't ask, how do I defeat them? He asked, what am I missing? Picture the war council again. Maps on the table. Torches flickering. The generals are aligned. Everyone agrees on the plan. That is exactly when Marcus becomes suspicious. Because unanimity feels comforting, but it is often the enemy of truth. So he asks a question that shifts the entire room. If you were the enemy commander, what would you do against us? The room stiffens. Not because the question is aggressive, but because it demands something rare: perspective. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This question forces the mind to step outside itself. And psychologically, that is one of the hardest things humans can do. Studies in cognitive science show that people dramatically overestimate their understanding of opposing views while underestimating their own blind spots. This is called the illusion of explanatory depth. Marcus was trained to dissolve that illusion. Reset with me, slow breath, and remember this line. If you cannot explain the other side fairly, you do not yet understand the issue. In modern life, this question is revolutionary. Someone says capitalism is the best system. Instead of countering, ask, what would a thoughtful critic say? If the answer is, they're just lazy or jealous, the conversation is already exposed. That response reveals caricature, not comprehension. In relationships, this question becomes even more powerful. During conflict, we often rehearse our own arguments repeatedly. Marcus would do the opposite. He would ask himself, if I were them with their fears, history, and limits, how would this feel? This isn't weakness, it's strategic empathy. Neuroscience shows that perspective-taking reduces emotional reactivity by over 30%, making resolution far more likely. Understanding calms the nervous system, yours and theirs. Reset moment, say it quietly. The wise seek to understand before they seek to be understood. Practical use today. Ask one of these. If someone intelligent disagreed with you, what would they say? What concern might they have that I'm overlooking? Notice how the tone of the conversation changes. The fight dissolves. Curiosity enters. Exercise for you. Think of a belief you strongly oppose. Now write the strongest possible version of that belief without sarcasm, without mockery. If you struggle, that struggle is the lesson. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to do this daily, not because he doubted himself, but because he respected reality. He governed an empire of conflicting cultures, religions, and ideologies. He knew one thing for certain: reality does not belong to one voice. He also warned himself, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. This question protects you from arrogance. It prevents the quiet corruption that comes from believing you are always right. And here's the deeper shock. Once you truly understand the opposing view, many arguments collapse on their own. Not because the other side wins, but because the problem becomes clearer than both positions. That is the power of perspective. Reset again, say it with me. Truth is larger than my opinion. And now we arrive at the edge. Once you understand the other side, once you've removed caricature and ego, only one test remains. A belief must not only make sense to you, it must survive when applied to everyone. That final test is next. Stay with me. Question 5. If everyone lived by that rule, what happens? Before we go any further, pause and say this with me. A belief that cannot survive everyone is not wisdom. This was the final mirror Marcus Aurelius used, not to win debates, but to test reality itself. Picture the scene again. The Roman tent is quiet now. The shouting has stopped. One general remains defiant. He says, we should do whatever brings victory. That sentence sounds practical, even noble, until Marcus asks one question. If every army lived by that rule, what would war become? Silence falls not because the answer is hard, but because it's unavoidable. This is the universal test, the question that drags an idea out of abstraction and forces it to live in the real world. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, what is not right for all is not right for one. This single sentence dismantles countless arguments. Reset with me, slow breath in, and remember this line. Truth survives scale. Ego does not. Let's bring this into modern life. Someone says it's okay if I lie a little. Everyone does it. Ask if everyone lied a little, would trust still exist? Someone says rules don't apply to me in this situation. Ask if everyone thought that way, what would order become? Someone says I had no choice. Ask if no one ever took responsibility, what would accountability become? Suddenly comfort collapses, because the mind can hide in exceptions, but truth lives in patterns. Psychology backs this up. Studies show that humans justify unethical behavior primarily by seeing themselves as special cases. When actions are universalized, moral clarity increases by over 40% according to behavioral ethics research. Marcus understood this intuitively. He didn't ask, does this benefit me? He asked, does this corrupt the whole? That's the Stoic difference. Reset moment, say it quietly. If it only works for me, it isn't a principle. Here's a powerful modern example. In business, a leader says, we exaggerate results to motivate the team. Ask if every leader exaggerated results, would trust in leadership survive? In relationships, I check their phone because I care. Ask if everyone invaded privacy in the name of care, what would love become? In society, freedom means doing whatever I want as long as I don't hurt anyone. Ask who defines hurt: immediate pain, long-term damage, emotional harm. That single question exposes weak philosophy faster than 1,000 counter-arguments. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire of over 60 million people. He knew that private exceptions become public disasters. That's why this question is so dangerous to false certainty and so protective of truth. Now, an important reset, listen carefully. This question is not about shaming, it's about responsibility. The Stoics believed that a good life must be coherent. Your actions today must be compatible with a world you're willing to live in tomorrow. Marcus wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. And this question forces that confrontation. Exercise for you, do this slowly. Take one belief you hold strongly, one rule you live by. Now ask if everyone lived by this rule, what kind of world would exist? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, don't defend it. That discomfort is wisdom knocking. Now let's address a critical mistake. Many people misuse this question as a weapon. They ask it sarcastically. They ask it to corner. They ask it to feel superior. That is not Stoic. That is ego-wearing philosophy. Marcus warned himself daily, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. So when you ask this question, ask it like a guardian of truth, not a judge. Tone matters. Intent matters. Silence matters. Because the goal is not to collapse others, it's to collapse illusions. Final reset, say it with me. Principles must survive everyone. And here's the deeper lesson. The Socratic method is not about destroying arguments. It's about protecting reality from comfortable lies. When you reach this fifth question, you've completed the circle from certainty to assumptions to humility to perspective to universality. This is where arguments end and wisdom begins. And that's why Marcus Aurelius didn't need to shout. Reality spoke for him. Stay with me because what comes next is how to use all five questions together without becoming manipulative and without losing your soul. If you want to practice this method, do one thing today. Pick one conversation and use just one question calmly. Then write it down. What did you learn? What assumption collapsed? What truth appeared? If this helped you, subscribe to Making Life Better. And before you go, comment just one word below: clarity. Because clarity is the reward of every honest question. The strongest voice in the room is often the quietest because it doesn't need to shout. It only needs to see.